I want to invite my good friend in, Mr. Rodney Bullard, to just open up for us. Rodney, I want to ask you, first of all, I want to thank you again, man, for being willing to take time out. Your schedule is crazy busy. I mean, crazy busy. And so the fact that you would be willing to carve out an hour of time with us this morning really means a lot to me. Thank you again for being willing to do so. What I want to do is, again, instead of me just reading off your bio, if you don't mind, just take a few moments and just tell us a little bit about who you are and your story, a little bit about that, and then we'll continue to move forward.
Absolutely. Anthony, thank you all. I hope that everyone can hear me. I know we've had a little bit of technical difficulty in the run-up to this, so if you can hear me, please just nod your head. Good. Well, good morning. My name is Rodney Bullard, and I am here, I presume, ending sheltering in place in Georgia. Today is the last day of our official sheltering in place, but I am at home in Atlanta, Georgia, which is home for me originally. And I work for a little chicken company called Chick-fil-A. And I have the opportunity to lead community affairs and corporate social responsibility and the Chick-fil-A Foundation there at Chick-fil-A. But a little bit about me, as Anthony said, and Atlanta's home. I grew up in Atlanta, Georgia, born and raised. I was born in the same hospital as my wife. She was born 3 days after me, and then we grew up in the same neighborhood. And so I tell people that God blesses babies and fools, and I was both. And so he has always taken good care of me. I then left after graduating from high school. I left and went off to the Air Force Academy. And I went off to the Air Force Academy because it was a great institution, a leadership institution, but they also had a great football team, and I was able to play football at the Air Force Academy, major in pre-law. Then I went off to Duke Law School, and I was able to do some things at Duke Law in a leadership capacity as a student leader, and then left and went into the Air Force. And I'll tell you, when I went into the Air Force, I initially was a little bit dismayed because all my friends at Duke were going off to big law firms, and I was in Biloxi, Mississippi. And I don't know if any of you all are from Biloxi, Mississippi. It is a wonderful place, but I didn't lose anything in Biloxi, Mississippi. I have some great friends there now, but I got there, and I remember trying my very first case, and it was very exciting for me. I had done mock trial in high school. I had done mock trial in college, and now this was the real thing. This was no longer mock. And I remember I had all these witnesses, and I was excited about the witnesses that I was calling. And I would go back to the witness room, and I would get my witness one by one along with the bailiff. And I called one witness, and the witness didn't answer. And I called the witness again, and then the witness still did not answer. And so I had to take a recess, and the judge was perturbed, and I was angry, and I was embarrassed. And I went back to the room, and I realized that there was a little black and white TV in the corner of the witness room. And everybody was spellbound looking at this black and white television. And I didn't understand why. And I said, what's going on? And everybody pointed to the television, and there were two towers on the television, and there was smoke coming out of the towers, and it was very clear that this was New York City. And they told me that a plane had crashed into one of the towers. And then shortly after, another plane crashed into a tower. And obviously, as you all know, this was September 11, 2001. And it really crystallized for me that what I was doing was bigger than me. That what I was doing was just about me. All the prestigious school that I want to talk about, but it was about my own leadership. It was about my own service. It was about giving back. And so I'm particularly appreciative of the opportunity to be here today. And I'm particularly appreciative of the leadership of Anthony Flynn. I know he just has started working with you all, but you will be tremendously impressed every step of the way with his service and his servant leadership. And so recently I wrote a book, and I know Anthony may talk about this as well during our discussion, but Heroes Wanted really is this sense of that we all have the ability to be someone else's hero, that we all have the obligation as well. And we all should have the confidence to be someone else's hero. And frankly, in the context of work and our own professional career, sometimes we have to have the confidence to be our own heroes as well. And so would love to talk to you all about that. I hope that you use the chat function and Also, send questions our way and allow for us to interact with you in that way, and to use this technology as the best we can. I'll close with this, and then I would love to get into a conversation with Anthony. Now, I woke up this morning and I try and take a walk. My goal during this sheltering in place is to walk 5 to 10 miles a day. I did my 5 miles this morning, and I'm gonna try and do another 5 at the end of the day. But I was thinking about Peter, and I was thinking about Peter and walking on water. And before I came and got online, I looked at the scripture, Matthew 22:31. And Peter was looking out and he saw Jesus walking on the water. And they thought Jesus was a ghost, so they were afraid. But Peter was intrepid enough, confident enough, and faithful enough to where he stepped out of the boat and walked on the water towards Jesus. And the Bible says something that's interesting. The Bible says that when Peter saw the wind, he then began to fall. And the whole phraseology of saw the wind, typically you would feel wind, typically you would hear wind, but I've never seen wind, not personally. Maybe in Texas, you all can see wind, but in Georgia, I can't see the wind. And so it was interesting to me because what it told me was no matter what, Peter had taken his eyes off of Jesus. He had taken his eyes off of that which he needed to have faith in. And so it was interesting that when he took his eyes off of the person, the entity that he should have faith and confidence in, that's when he began to fall. And so I encourage all of us to continue to have faith. And I know this is about the workplace and faithfulness as well. And so that was encouraging me for you as well. So Anthony, I look forward to the conversation with you, my friend, and appreciate you very much.
Absolutely, man. Thank you so much for sharing those inspiring words. Very encouraging to hear that from you. And man, you're making me feel short on my workout game too. That 10 miles a day. I got to play catch up. I'm still getting my workout in, but I have to admit I haven't been walking 10 miles a day, brother. So,
okay, man, I know you're a workout warrior. I have no concerns about you.
Well, man, one of the things that, you have a lot of intriguing things about your life and your story, Rodney, and your career, and I know one of those intriguing things that I think others will want just a small peep into would be your experience as a White House fellow.
Yes.
So would you mind talking a little bit, just briefly about, that experience? What made you apply and what did you get out of that experience? So.
Absolutely. And hopefully I'm not having too much technical difficulty. I'm competing with my 12-year-old son for his broadband. And distance learning. White House Fellowship. Many of you all may not know what the White House Fellowship fellows. You know Colin Powell, you know Sanjay Gupta, you know Doris Kearns Goodwin, you know many of the luminaries who have gone through the program. President Clinton called it the nation's most prestigious private club. And I recall I was in the Air Force when I applied for it. And a number of people who go through the fellowship are in the military, not all, in fact, the vast majority are not, but you do have a number of people who have gone through, many generals have gone through the White House Fellow Program. And I remember applying for the program and just having to get a sense of the application, having to get a sense of the awesomeness of the program. And I got there and I made my way to nationals. And we were at the Naval Academy, and there was this guy who came up to me. He was in the Coast Guard. He said, "Oh man," he said, "we're not going to make it. There's this guy here. He's a Navy SEAL. He was a Rhodes Scholar. He looks like James Bond, and you're not going to make it." And so I looked at him. I said, "Well, man, I appreciate you. I don't know about this young man that you're talking about, but I'm gonna do my best, and God's gonna take care of me." And he did not make it. He didn't have confidence in himself during that time. He did not make it. The young man he was talking about is my son's godfather. In fact, he is a Navy SEAL. He did all great things. He later was the governor of Missouri. And the fellowship for me was an opportunity to work at the highest level of government. You work as a special assistant to the president. George W. Bush was the president when I was there. It's a nonpartisan program, and work for a cabinet secretary or a large agency. And I worked for NASA. I had opportunity to work in several different places, but I figured how many times would I get a chance to be that close to a space shuttle, to astronauts, and it was an amazing experience. I traveled to Russia, Japan, China, South America, all with the space program. And it was an amazing experience to really learn about the space program. But what I learned most importantly from the fellowship was that it's all about relationships, that relationships make everything go. They make DC go, how people interact with one another or how poorly they interact with one another. Even as I think about this pandemic, it's the relationship and trust that we have for our leaders and that they have for one another and how they interact with one another that really allows leadership to be productive. And so the fellowship was a great experience for me that continues to pay dividends. One, I continue to be allowed to mentor people through the fellowship or through the application process. I have a number of friends who have now gone off to be great things, from governors to generals to CEOs through the program. And it's a program that really I think about every day, because the obligation of the program is we're going to give you this great experience. We're going to give you this great network, but you have to go and pay it forward. You have to go back to your hometown and you have to give back. You can't just sit on it. You can't just have the laurels of the experience, and you can't just say, I'm gonna make money, I'm gonna be wealthy. You have to give back through the experience and through the network. And so it has been a great experience for me.
Yeah, it's funny. One of the things that has always been intriguing about me, obviously I've had a chance to get to know you really well, and is that I see the thread of how service has just been woven throughout your life. Candidly, you get, there are lots of career paths in the world that you could take, and there are calls you can make that the average human being wouldn't get through on those calls. And yet you continue to devote your life to service and to impact in the world around you. And I'm curious to know, talk a little bit about that, Rodney. Where did your heart for service really come from? Because again, you come from a really solid family. Your dad was a retired NFL player, right? And so, you had numerous opportunities, but service has really been a part of your core, and you've chosen a path of service and generosity. Talk a little bit about that for us.
Thank you, man. And like you, I think service is integral to leadership. So my father's a Baptist minister. He went to Morehouse College, and he then went off and then came.
Rodney, you're fading out on us quite a bit.
Back. Okay. Is that better?
Okay. Yeah, that's better.
Okay. My father played for the Denver Broncos, as Anthony said. After he finished playing for the Broncos, he came back to Atlanta, where he had gone to college. And he got involved in politics initially, and then he got involved after going to seminary as a pastor here in the city. So for most of my life, I've known my father as a pastor. And my father's a big man. He's has the ability to be menacing. He was an offensive tackle for the Broncos. And my father, though, has a huge heart. And I always saw that my father respected people. And it didn't matter whether they were someone in a high authority position or whether or not they were someone past. My father treated them the same. And I think in my own life that people have made all sorts of assumptions about me, whether it be my color, my size, my profession. They make assumptions about me, and oftentimes those assumptions are very narrow and very shallow. And so it really, from an empathetic standpoint, I fully understand the need for service. I fully understand that service is part and parcel of leadership, and that leadership is the reason why we're here, and we have that opportunity. And everybody doesn't get the things that some of us have been given. And so I want to make sure that I use service as a thread throughout. And it doesn't matter what job I'm in, whether I'm a lawyer. Previously, I've worked as a lawyer at the Department of Justice with Sally Yates, and service was key there. I've worked at the Pentagon, and service was key there. I now work in a business, for-profit business selling chicken. which is different than what I did previously. And service still is a component of that as well. And so regardless of where you are, wherever you are, service should be a part of that because people are a part of it. And therefore you have an opportunity to take care of someone else.
Man, thank you for sharing that. Speaking of service, without getting into anything proprietary, talk a little bit about that culture at Chick-fil-A and just that value for service and how your personality, I mean, you were the first formal, if you will, president of the Chick-fil-A Foundation. Yeah. So that makes a big statement to the world, right? To the marketplace, your character and your story and your alignment with the work that's happening at a company that many of us admire and respect so much. How does service play out in your day-to-day role and just really in the day-to-day culture at Chick-fil-A?
Yeah. It's interesting. Chick-fil-A's corporate purpose doesn't say anything about selling chicken or waffle fries. It says to have a positive influence, to glorify God by being a good and faithful servant, and by having a positive influence on everyone who comes in contact with Chick-fil-A. And that is so critical. And you see that, and hopefully you feel that every time by being a good and faithful steward and having a positive influence on everyone who comes in contact with Chick-fil-A. And hopefully you feel that when you're at the counter and they say, may I refresh your beverage? Hopefully you feel that now as you go through the drive-through and you get the service, and you see hopefully how we take care of our team members and how our operators really lead on the ground, and they are the secret sauce to what Chick-fil-A does. It's our operators and our team members. And so that culture of service is really the secret sauce for Chick-fil-A. It is the competitive advantage. It is that which is hard to do if it's not really germane to who you are. It's hard to do when you're sitting in a boardroom and you say, well, we're going to have this element of service, and then to thread that down from the top all the way down to the bottom and back again, because the team members inspire us as much as anything else. So that element of service, I do think, is a competitive advantage.
Man, that's beautiful. And speaking of service, in the midst of COVID-19, talk a little bit about the impact you are having, the foundation is having, and the company is having, on those you all are serving, because, people don't realize how much impact Chick-fil-A, I mean, you see it, but for those of us who even admire the company and see some of, people get to read headlines. Of course, I know you well, and so I get to hear it firsthand. But what are some of the things you all are doing, to impact our country right now as COVID-19 is continuing to unfold and everybody is curious about what next moves are and the crisis we're facing? Sure. How is that playing out?
Well, there are a couple of things that we have been blessed with the opportunity to do. And one is to give money to our operators for them to give directly to their local communities. And so each operator has been given about $10,000 so that they can give to our local communities, whether it be in Houston or whether it be in Atlanta or South Dakota, wherever. And they are able to give and encouraged to give along the lines of hunger, homelessness, or education. And we see in this time that there are a number of needs that have always been there, but are particularly revealed by this crisis, and particularly revealed by sheltering in place, because sheltering in place is a privilege. Everybody does not have the opportunity to do that. Everybody cannot sustain that either. And so we're mindful of that. Personally, I've been asked to work on
Rodney, we lost you there for a sec. At personally,
COVID-19, you broke up on me, my friend.
Okay, my apologies. We heard personally, and we lost you there.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, sir. We hear you.
All right. Personally, I am working on the governor's COVID-19 task force, the subcommittee for community engagement here in Georgia. And one of the things that we are keenly aware is how this pandemic, this disease, is impacting those who are underserved and those who are physically and economically fragile already. And it's not just the elderly, it's those who have underlying conditions such as diabetes and heart conditions and lung conditions and It's important that we look at that. In Georgia alone, 80% of the deaths have come from, have been in the African American community. And so testing, particularly in the African American community, is important. Personally working on testing in the community that I grew up in. And so the opportunity to do that is critical, and it's rewarding from that standpoint that we have a lot to do. And I think of this in three phases. I think right now that we are in the response phase. I did a lot of work with Hurricane Katrina back in the day as a White House fellow, and I think of it, right hands are blowing. We're in the response phase of this hurricane or this pandemic. We're trying to batten the hatches. We're trying to help each other. And now, as I was told, in Texas, all are coming out. And so now that's the recovery phase. When you come out of the hurricane and you see that the buildings have been knocked down, you see that there's a need to resurrect and rebuild things. And that, to me, is the recovery phase. And we're going to be in that recovery phase for some time. We got to focus on getting people back to work, got to focus on helping people. But then there's the resiliency phase, the third phase. And that's the phase that, if I use the hurricane analogy further, that's the phase where I'm now putting on a new roof. I'm putting on, I'm passing building codes for hurricanes. And I'm doing something so that I will be more resilient the next time that hurricane approaches. And we may, in fact, have another pandemic. And if it's not another pandemic, we will have something that will jar us. And we need to be stronger. We need to be stronger personally. We need to be stronger from a community standpoint. We need to be stronger as a nation. And so those are the three phases we're thinking about: our response, our recovery, getting people back on their feet, but then making sure that they're stilled for the next issue.
Rodney, thank you for sharing that. And I'm not sure you can even share anything on this relative to, the state of Georgia and how, we essentially led the charge,
Yes.
in the state of Georgia for reopening, right? There was a lot of backlash and a lot of confrontation and confusion and all of that around the country as a result of Governor Kemp in Georgia making that decision to proceed with opening. Is there anything you can say that wouldn't violate the role you play on the governor's board about why that decision was made and your perspective around that?
Sure. So one, I want to make sure I'm clear. I play a very small role on the community engagement committee, so I'm not in a decision-making role. I'm in a role where I have the opportunity to help activate and to communicate. But I do know that it's not an easy decision. And sometimes we can, in the media, make things black and white, and it's not a political decision. Quite frankly, this is not a red or a blue decision. This is a people decision. And as I said earlier, sheltering in place is a privilege. And I'm blessed to sit at home, and I'm blessed to still receive a paycheck, and I'm blessed to where I can do this for a number of days, months, even years. But others cannot. And so if you are expectant of a paycheck, if your savings are not significant, that's an issue personally about getting back to work. How quickly can you get back to work? How long can you sustain this? It also is an issue from a government perspective. How long can a government actually be shut down without revenue coming in? It impacts bond ratings. It impacts all sorts of things that you have to be mindful of. And even from a hospital standpoint, you think about the places that are most critical for us right now, our hospitals and our first responders. Hospitals make money off of elective procedures. And right now, there are no elective procedures that really are going on. It is all about COVID, and that is rightfully so. And so it is not an easy decision. And I don't mean to support the decision. That's not my goal. And it's not my goal to decry the decision either. I just think, as you said, look, leadership is much harder when you're in the seat. But it's important, no matter what, when you're in the seat, that you think about service, that you think about people, and that you think beyond yourself.
That's beautiful, Rodney. And speaking of service, I tell us a little bit about the book you wrote, man. Heroes Wanted. I mean, once again, you have expertise in so many arenas, and you could have written a book on a number of topics, and yet you chose Heroes Wanted. And so tell us a little bit about the inspiration behind the book and essentially the meaning of the book.
Yeah. So the inspiration, thank you for that, man. I'm inspired by you as an author. And so I saw friends like you writing books. I saw friends like my good friend Wes Moore, who wrote The Other Wes Moore. And I realized that books can be vehicles for messaging. That you can reach people, you can touch more people, you can influence more people through a book than you can what I had previously been doing, which was, can you all hear me? Good.
Yeah, we hear you. We lost you for a sec, but we hear you.
Okay. Yeah, my computer said it was unstable. So a book really is a calling card that can reach people in a unique way. And the message that I thought that I wanted to have was that there were these unexpected heroes in our lives. In fact, the book is called Why the World Needs You to Live Your Heart Out. But the original title was Unexpected Heroes. And in my life, I had a first grade teacher who was an unexpected hero for me. When I was in first grade, I was attending a very prestigious private school that my parents were scraping to send me to go to school, scraping to send me. It was expensive. I didn't know. My father was a Baptist minister, my mother an educator, and I had no real idea that this was a burden on them. But I did know it was in school. I was having a difficult time academically. I was having a difficult time reading, and I was having a difficult time just keeping up. And at some point, my mother received a call in the middle of the school year, and the lady on the other end said, "Mrs. Bullard, Rodney is a fine young man, but he's not level." And my mother had a difficult choice to make. She's an educator. She has a son who is not reading on grade level, an African-American son in the South who's not reading on grade level. And so she decided, instead of taking the advice of the school, which was to place me in a developmentally slower class, she decided to move me and put me in another school. And I went to a school called the Rainbow Church Christian School in Decatur, Georgia, not a prestigious school, and a school in my neighborhood. And I got there and I was distraught. I was distraught because I had been moved in the middle of the school year. I was distraught because I also thought that they would figure out that I was not reading on grade level, that they would figure out my secret. And so I got in class and I just sat there and I was despondent. And by the end of the school year, my first grade teacher, Mrs. Janie Adams, did realize that I was not reading on grade level. And she called my mother as well at the end of the school year. And she said, "Mrs. Bullard, Rodney's a fine young man, but he's not reading on grade level." And she said, "But I see potential in him. And I would like to take him for the summer and have him come to my home and I will tutor him." And she tutored me and she taught me to read phonetically. And at the end of the summer, I was 2 and 3 grade levels ahead of my peers. And so this sense of this unexpected hero, and particularly in this time of COVID-19, this sense of an unexpected hero who didn't have a big title. She was a teacher at a private school that no one had heard of. And she was a hero for me that made an indelible difference. And that difference is a difference I try and return on every day. And so Heroes Wanted really is this sense of, how can we be someone else's hero? And how can we recognize other heroes, particularly those who are unsung heroes? It's easy to see the billionaires. It's easy to see those who are on television. It's easy to see those who have a title and a role. But right now, we have understood how essential many of our heroes are, how essential many of our heroes that we have previously walked past, the person who bags our groceries, person who brings us responders, those who have had to remain on duty as we shelter in place. And so I think Heroes Wanted is particularly relevant in this time. And in fact, Anthony, I'm thinking about the second book, which is Bridges Needed, and this sense of community that we have lost in some ways because we're sheltering in place. But it's interesting. I told you I walk every morning and every evening, and I'm meeting neighbors that I haven't met before, and they did read from me for the last 5 years. And I'm connecting with people and saying hello, and everybody is so much more collegial than they have been. And I hope that we continue that even after we have to remain 6 feet apart.
Rodney, in fact, and you didn't ask me to do this, but I'm doing it because I see tremendous value in your writing. Tell everyone how they can actually find your book and actually find you. But before you answer that, everyone, if you will, begin to type questions in the chat box for us so that we can actually reveal some questions to Rodney. Feel free to begin that process now. And so I'm going to have Rodney tell us a little bit about how we can actually find his book. And if you all don't have questions, I have plenty more for him, but I would like to now ask you to begin the process of letting us know some of the questions you have. So Rodney, how do we get in touch with you? Meaning, yes. How do we follow you? Not necessarily get in touch with you. Your schedule is crazy. It's hard even for me as a friend to get in touch with you. So, but how do we follow you, and how do we find your book?
Well, you can find my book on Amazon. You can find my book at Barnes & Noble. You can order the book. It's Heroes Wanted book. So if you go into Amazon and you type in Heroes Wanted, and be sure to include the word book, because there is a board game, a Spanish board game from Spain. It is also in Heroes Wanted. So I think the board game is wonderful, but I want to make sure that you get the book and not the board game. And so you can also go to LinkedIn and find me there. You can go to Twitter. You can go to Instagram. And you can go to Facebook, and I'm Rodney.Bullard, Bullard, on all of those handles: Twitter, LinkedIn, Facebook. We will engage at some point where bridges needed at the end of the year, beginning of 2021. And so I encourage you to look out for that. But Heroes Wanted, you can find us on Amazon, again, Heroes Wanted book.
Yeah, and our plan at some point is to get you to Houston, Texas, where I can have you engage our audience in person. Obviously, plenty of time on the other side of COVID-19 down the line. So maybe when you release that new book, we'll figure out how to get you to Houston and have you speak for us in the community and really us help to promote that book. Because I know everything about you is about service and generosity. And so I want to make sure that we give you a platform to be able to share your heart with us. So let's see. We had one question to pop up, and that question was, how does the virtual environment affect the ability to form relationships?
I think that's a wonderful question. And in many ways, the virtual environment doesn't impact us any more than the physical environment is a conduit for relationship. Relationship is exactly what we're doing now. We're having conversation, we're connecting in some way. And the virtual environment, whether it be email, whether it be Zoom, whether it be Blue Jeans, Facebook, etc., the virtual environment should be a tool that, if used properly, we can connect with one another. If used improperly, it can be a tool of division. It can be a tool of misinformation. And you've seen that regularly. You've seen that in our political system. We've seen that in our media. But I think that the virtual environment is definitely a tool that we should continue to use. And I'll be honest, I'll be the first one who will go outside and be happy to connect with other people physically. And we should not take that for granted, and in fact, be overjoyed with the opportunity to do it once we can, once again. But the virtual environment's great.
Yeah, another quick question, Rodney, is the economy of the homeless has been devastated because of the necessary actions to stop this spread of COVID-19. So are you, or is Chick-fil-A, doing anything specifically targeting the homeless? I know hunger is one of those three pillars, in hunger, homelessness, et cetera, and one of those three pillars. So speak to that a little bit.
Absolutely. So hunger, homelessness, and education.
Yeah.
We have, and so our homeless partner nationally is Covenant House. And one of the reasons why we particularly appreciate Covenant House is because they help homeless youth in particular, but they help cycle them to sufficiency. They help them on an economic path, and they help move them from a place of homelessness and destitution to a place in which they can stand on their own and be on their own. And that's because in many cases, particularly with homelessness, you can go, you can give, you can feel good about it, but that's just a Band-Aid moment. We want those moments to really get us and get those homes to a place where they no longer have to claim homelessness. And so we are giving to organizations here in Atlanta, like the Atlanta Mission, which is a wonderful organization and has been hit hard by COVID-19 because they can't shelter in place, they can't distance, and they don't distance for lots of reasons. And so homeless population, City of Refuge here in Atlanta, another homeless shelter, we're giving to them and supporting them as well. And I previously was on the board there, City of Refuge. So there are a number of places. Food, the Atlanta Community Food Bank, and then Feeding America is our national partner as it relates to food. And Feeding America is helping to support food banks throughout the country. And the homeless are the recipients of that food in many cases. So homelessness is very much an issue that we're concerned about, particularly coming out of COVID-19.
The question was asked, can you share a little bit more about how you've been able to share your faith in the workplace, and particularly in secular environments?
Yeah. Well, I have the opportunity and the privilege of working at Chick-fil-A, which is not a church at all. We're very much a business, but it's run by a family that's very proud of its faith, and faith is intertwined and a part and parcel of the business. As our founder would say, True Catholic is not a Bible institute, but it's built on biblical principles. But I've always shared my faith, whether it be in the military. I've shared my faith in little ways, and it will come out in my speak. It's not anything that overwhelms or is prejudice against anyone else, but it comes across hopefully in the manner that I treat people, hopefully in the manner that I live my life, and hopefully let my light shine. And so that has come across even as a prosecutor, even as a defense counsel, and particularly in those cases where my actions can very much impact someone else's life. I had 2 young men that I prosecuted who were from my hometown and from my neighborhood, and they had robbed a bank, and they were 17 years old. And these were just babies, quite frankly. But they had robbed a bank, and they had come out of the bank, and they were in a relatively crowded urban area, and their getaway driver was spooked. And the getaway driver drove away, and they saw an elderly lady coming out of a Whole Foods. And they decided to follow her to her car, as she had groceries in her hand, and they were going to take her car. But what they did next was they took her groceries and they gently placed her on the sidewalk. They didn't knock her in the head. They didn't knock her down. They didn't knock her groceries out of her hand. They gently placed her groceries on the sidewalk, and her person was made safe by them. And then they got in her car. And by the time they got in the car, before they could even turn the ignition, the police were on them. And they were arrested. And, you know, from my own faith perspective, it was important to me that this be about their own rehabilitation, not just punishment, not just hurting them and harming them. But there was clearly more than a kernel of good in these young men. But this was a serious offense, and they were going to do serious time no matter what. But how could I pour into them even as a prosecutor? And so I think you can use your faith in any scenario. And as I said, it doesn't have to be a faith that comes out and is exhorted by you talking about God, Jesus, whomever. It can come out just by you talking about service and leadership and exhibiting who you are in that way.
Beautiful. Thank you for sharing that. Another quick question relative to heroes. How do you recommend identifying and recognizing heroes, Rodney? As many heroes, like your first grade teacher, you know, I'm not even sure if you know where she is today. You might. I went and found my 5th grade teacher because of the impact that she made on my life. But what are some things you can do, you recommend, to recognize some of those people who are unsung heroes?
Absolutely. I have looked for Mrs. Adams, and I have not found her. I've stalked her son's name was Chandler Adams, so I've stalked a few Chandler Adams, and they've told me that they are not her son. But what you can do most importantly is to recognize them. We walk past people all day long, the doorman, the person who's sweeping up, the janitor. We walk past people and we don't recognize them. We don't say hello. We don't connect with them. And something as simple as just recognizing someone, letting them know that I see you, and therefore I appreciate you. That's really important. We often think it has to be something grandiose, an award or some sort of large recognition, public recognition. It does not. People's souls are rotting on the inside because they are not connecting with others and others are walking past them. And so I encourage you, just particularly in this time, to continue to just say thank you, to connect, have a conversation, get to know someone's name. I encourage my son who's 12, get to know someone's name and then call them by their name. That is so critical in how we connect with others.
Anything you can share around how Chick-fil-A is equipping the employees, the families of Chick-fil-A for this crisis? Is there anything you can share around that? That was a question that came from.
Yeah. So I've been proud with ChickfilAs Response, and we've had a number of great leaders who have responded to that. And we were one of the first fast food restaurants or quick service restaurants to close the dining room. And that was not just for the safety of the community, but also for the safety of those team members. And then our operators have done a wonderful job of equipping those team members with PPE and making sure that they are protected and connected. I had an opportunity recently. We have a wonderful scholarship program where we give out anywhere from $2,500 scholarships, and then we also give out $25,000 scholarships. And so over 16,000 students have gotten a scholarship from Chick-fil-A just this past year. And there was an operator who, just to stay connected to his team, he had a Zoom call and has a regular Zoom call. And he connects with them, and they have essentially this happy hour. And they are connecting, and he was giving out scholarships, and I was able to come on and do that. And so there are lots of ways in which our operators are taking care of their team members. Lots of ways in which our operators are staying connected to our team members and finding out what's going on in their lives and making sure that they're aware of how they can help. So proud to really serve with the Chick-fil-A operators, our franchisees.
Thank you for sharing that. And I had another question of how do you find the time to be a hero if you are in the marketplace, you're in the workplace, and you have a team that reports to you, you're a supervisor, but you're trying to figure out how to both manage someone, if you will, or lead someone as it pertains to your responsibilities versus also, being a hero to them in the process.
Absolutely. I think that's a great question. And it's a question that we often think that we have to do something extra, that we have to do something on the side, that we have to have some extracurricular work to be a hero, and we don't. Being a hero is implicit in your work. It's implicit in how you treat people, how you connect with people. And it's implicit in how you lead. And so it really is part and parcel. If you are a supervisor, it's important that you know how your people are doing. It's important that you care. It's important that when you have an opportunity as a supervisor, that you show compassion, that you show grace, that you show mercy. It's important that you are concerned about their future and their growth. And all of that is heroic. And sometimes we don't cast that as heroism. And sometimes because we don't cast that as heroism, we find ourselves thinking that leadership is about wins and losses, that it's about dollars and cents, that it's about management and not leadership. It's about spreadsheets. And all those things are important. But I can find somebody who can do a spreadsheet, I can find somebody who can do a business plan, and they may not be a leader. And so it's important that you understand that being a hero is your everyday obligation. You wake up and you have a choice. Am I going to be a hero today? Am I going to connect with someone? There's a story in the book, and I'll say it quickly. A friend of mine by the name of Dr. Gregory Ellison tells this wonderful story that when he was 6 years old, he had an Aunt Dot. And he asked Aunt Dot, how do you save the world? And Aunt Dot said, that's a big question for a 6-year-old. And he said, yes, it is. And she said, I don't know the answer as to how you save the world, but I do know you can always connect with the people within your 3 feet, that you can do what you can within the 3 feet. You may not save someone in China. You may not save someone in West Texas, but you can In fact, connect with someone in your 3 feet. And every day, we have the opportunity and the obligation to impact positively our 3 feet.
Rodney, a question was asked about if you could go back to the 3 R's in response to COVID-19. You shared, yeah.
Happy. So our first R is our response. And again, thinking in a hurricane analogy, our response, our recovery, and then our resiliency. And being mindful of all 3 and all 3 stages that we must accomplish.
Awesome. Thank you. And you know, a last question of where do you, your thoughts on where to serve people? You know, there's so many different options out there. So the question was asked around, how do you strategize where you actually want to serve?
Absolutely. So from a Chick-fil-A perspective, I think we strategize around 2 things. Where is the intersection of need and competency? Where can we actually help? What need can we actually fulfill? And we can't do everything. We have a finite number of resources, finite number of people, and finite talents. So we can't do everything. From a personal perspective, I encourage people to really consider, you know, what's your passion? I tell people that my passion is helping other people, particularly young people, mentoring young people. But other people have a passion for trees. Other people have a passion for dogs. I love dogs, but it's not my passion. I'm not going out there trying to save the dogs. I love trees. They're wonderful, but I don't wake up thinking about trees. And so you have to find whatever your passion is and to follow that. And if you do that, then you can be a hero in that space to that activity.
Okay, I'm sorry, Rodney. There are 2 more. 2 more.
That's fine.
You're cool. So one is any thoughts around, has Chick-fil-A ever thought about, I know the answer to this, but has Chick-fil-A ever thought about opening on Sundays in light of, yeah.
No, Chick-fil-A has not thought about opening on Sundays. That will not happen. Privately held company, and I can promise you that won't happen.
Yeah. That question was asked. And then you wear many different hats. Have you been challenged in these recent times to make decisions that don't necessarily align with your values?
I think we're always challenged around our decisions, and I think the answer is probably yes. There are definitely challenges, and look, that's a workplace thing as well. I have a position of leadership, but I'm not the leader or the sole leader. I definitely report to others, and so yes. You're always challenged, and you always have to make that determination of, in a workplace where you're not the final authority, that you say, is this something that I can't live with? And if it's not, as Colin Powell used to say, I serve at the pleasure of the president, but I serve how long I am pleased to serve. And so you have to make those determinations for yourself as well. But it's always going to be a difficult decision. Going back to the governor's choice, here in Georgia. I know that he has thought about that long and hard as to the impact of his decisions on this state and the people in this state. I'm sure the same thing is true for those in Texas and every other state in the country. So there is an impact to being a leader. There's a difficulty to being a leader, but that's also the reason why we need more people to step up and be leaders.
Well, man, it's been a joy, man. Thank you so much for taking time out to interview with us. You know, I would have one last thing for you to share with us. Just a goal or a dream you have outside of work. Yeah. Just, you know, for life, what's a goal or a dream you have that you can leave us with?
Personal goal. My personal goal, and I thought about this on my walk today, is to be everything that God wants me to be. So to fulfill every talent, not to leave anything on the table. I want to do everything that He has gifted me to do, and to do it well, and to do it better than I did yesterday, to compete against myself, and to be pleasing in His sight in that way. And so whether that takes me into different professions, different arenas in that way, whether that takes me into different opportunities of service, I want to make sure that I don't shortchange what he has ordained for me. And you can easily shortchange yourself because of a lack of confidence, because of a lack of vision, because of a lack of faith. And so I'll leave that with your listeners and those who are on this call. Be everything that God has in store for you.
Oh, man, thank you so much, brother. Look, again, everyone, don't hesitate. If you can, go online, order the book, Heroes Wanted. Just know that the proceeds are impacting, the very people that Rodney speaks to impact as a result of you purchasing that book. So we're grateful for him for writing it. Rodney, I look forward to the next one that's coming out. I'm excited. I can tell you in advance, I'm going to figure out a way to get you to Houston so
Please.
that you can actually share that message. So I want to be first in line to make sure we get you to Houston so you can share when that book is preparing to launch. And again, everyone, make sure you follow Rodney on social media, all the social media outlets, LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram, whatever the case. Be sure to actually connect with him. And do know that this is the first of many. We are going to be releasing soon who our next speaker, our speaker for the month of June is. And so make sure that you are on our email list. If you are not on our email list, please feel free to reach out to us. Go to our website, workfaithconnection.org, workfaithconnection.org. Make sure you go and check out our website and get in our community. We send out email notifications on a frequent basis, and so we want to keep you up to date. But Rodney, again, I thank you, man, for your time. It's been an honor. You are incredibly busy, so we want to give you a few minutes back. Go ahead, please.
Thank you, brother. I just wanted to say thank you for your leadership. Thank you for everybody on the call, and God bless, and continue to stay safe.
All right. Well, everyone, we will be in touch again soon, preparing you for our next speaker for the month of June, and so definitely get connected to us. Thank you all so much.